Oh, good evening, Nicola. Listen, thank you so much for appearing tonight. I know that you're a
You're welcome.
mother of three kids and you're going through lockdown like the rest of us. People think celebrities have this lifestyle which is completely, sort of outside the realm of normal people, but you are definitely going through it yourself at the moment. Now,
Mm.
my first question to you is, and I've got to ask this, and I'm sure you have been asked this 1,000 times, but I don't think many Australians know how big the show Neighbours was in the UK. When I was at university, all my mates, the big rugby playing types, and every lunchtime, the whole place would stop to watch Kylie and Jason. And then when I joined the British Army, and again, the whole British Army would stop. These are not your typical soap opera fans. Now, we're of a similar age, so you must have seen that phenomenon growing up. And to be suddenly an English kid suddenly thrust into that, it must have been an absolutely mind-blowing experience.
Yes, it was. It was unusual in the sense that I was very aware how popular Neighbours was, particularly obviously in the UK. And like you, when I was at college, people used to duck off to the common room and watch the episodes at lunchtime. But actually, I just wrote about this in my autobiography this week that I actually don't think Australians do understand how important not just Neighbours, but soaps in general are in the UK. And I was describing in the book that life is very different in the UK. So obviously it's colder, it's a bit more miserable. So what people tend to do is they run from buses and cars and trains to their offices and homes. And then when they get inside, they like to catch up with these people that they consider friends in their
Yeah.
soaps, and it's like friends catching up with friends and family. But unfortunately the people in the soaps don't have a clue who you are. And I said, look, admittedly that is quite a weird phenomenon and quite a weird scenario, but I know it's very comforting to a lot of people. And it's weird because for me, I've only known Neighbours making the show. I never watched it. I never watched an episode
Okay.
before doing the show. And I obviously I did watch the episodes that I was in when they went to air. And I can tell you that it was like moving onto a jumping train, because walking onto the set, I was really aware of all the history, because even though I hadn't watched the show, I was very aware of the big names that had came from there, the Jason, Kylie, Natalie Imbruglia, even Guy Pearce, and a lot of big names came out of Neighbours. And so I felt sort of a big respect for the sets, even though they were a bit wobbly, and it did feel like it was being done on the cheap. But I think that soaps in general, when you get there, it's sort of underwhelming, because you think, well, this show that's that huge can't be made here in this wobbly set, but they are. And all credit to them, because they're very beloved.
Oh God, yeah. I had a neighbour from who was in Coronation Street, and it was a bizarre. You meet him on the street, and then you see him on the TV every week. Absolutely bizarre. And moving on, and I noticed that you recently published a book, The Witches of Turak, and I've read it.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I really enjoyed it. Your writing style very much reminded me of Jilly Cooper, the Rochester Polo riders.
Yeah, I
And
take that as a compliment. Wow.
oh God, yeah. And look, I've published a couple of novels myself, and I found that the low point was when you're 60,000 words into the book and you're looking at it and going, Christ, this is absolutely terrible, but you've done so much work. You don't want to abandon the project. And then you go to a dinner party, and all your mates say, oh, Tim, we haven't seen you for a while. And then your
Yeah.
partner, your girlfriend says, oh, he's been writing a novel. And then every single person around the table gives you their idea about writing a novel. And at that time, every one of them sounds brilliant. And you're sitting there going, God, what am I doing? So, what was your lowest point when you were going through the writing process?
Oh, well, those lowest points didn't come with The Witches of Turak. which was a blessing actually, because I finished writing that during 111 days of lockdown in 2020.
Yeah.
But I had written a couple of other books prior to that which haven't been published. One of them couldn't be published for legal reasons because it was non-fiction and it was about a real event, and the person I wrote it about took legal action to stop the book being published.
Oh God.
And this is another thing I touch on in my autobiography. There's sort of a 3-year gap in my life where I apologize in the autobiography and say, look, this dramatic thing happened in my life during that 3-year time period, and I am prevented by law from telling you about it. And the reason I'm prevented from telling you about it is because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And how annoying I find it that for the highest bidder, you can hide the truth. And that's the kind of world that we're living in at the moment, which obviously relates to politics as well as personal issues. But it seems to me that truth and honesty are all but forgotten. So what I did is I got my head around that and I tried to be smart. And I told myself, you know what, if I can't write non-fiction, I'll write everything as fiction. And then if people look at the scenarios in my fiction novels and think, damn, that rings a bit true, it's all fiction.
Look, that's precisely why I write historical fiction. The characters in my novels have all been dead for 150 years. God bless them. Yeah. But you do. And so, look, moving on, which I think is really, really important. We read the article about you in the Daily Mail, where 2 of your kids are American nationals, as I understand it, and you made a fairly innocuous comment about President Trump. Now, I'm not going to get into the pros and cons of President Trump. I think that, the perspective, I think a much more nuanced perspective will come out probably in 20 years' time. But for God's sake, you're an actress, you're a writer, and you're expressing a private opinion. And what was it? You were vilified 2,000 times as a racist. How on earth did you deal with that?
Well, a couple of ways. Firstly, it wasn't really a private comment because I said it on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I do have a verified account on Twitter. They sort of verified me before they realized about my politics. So I think once they realized, I know they refused to verify my Instagram. So I think they sort of, as we say in Australia, spat the dummy when they realized what was going on. So I realized it was a public comment, but I was sort of reaching across the ocean and saying farewell to an outgoing president and administration. And it was very innocuous and I felt very innocent. And actually, I didn't realize that anyone else had really seen it. I thought if the Trump camp read through the comments, at least they'll be able to say to him, wow, 25,000 people said goodbye to you. And I would be one of them, and it would just be sort of a historic goodbye to a president who I had publicly supported. Absolutely. And it was quite surprising, but also fascinating to me that when I first looked at it, over 1,400 times, I was called a racist for saying goodbye to President Trump. And I found that really interesting because I myself am mixed race. I mean, I don't kind of shout about it. I don't. My dad has passed away, but he was Brazilian. My mum is German. She still lives in the UK. The love of my life is Greek as Greek can be. And I just thought, wow, because I'd never been called that before. And I'd never thought that supporting a president based on policies I agreed with, small government, big business, capitalism. Unfortunately, I, like most people, I am a bit of a capitalist. I try and do better for my children. Yeah. I never thought that would come my way. But what was great about it is that lots of other people in the media in Australia who I'd never heard of, or if I had heard of them, I'd never connected with them, saw that comment and contacted me, and also saw, some of the trolling, and got me on podcasts and did interviews with me, and were really, really supportive. So I don't know who the people were that were calling me a racist or what their motivation was, but it was water off a duck's back. I have to say, I've been on Twitter since 2011. And if I wasn't used to being called names on a daily basis, I would have been off there long ago.
Oh, God. Look, the point I'm making is it's not like you're a professional politician. You know, you're a writer, you're an actress, and
Not
basically,
yet, Tim.
yeah. Well, this is funnily enough. This was the next question. I know a lot of the members at the end of lockdown are becoming a lot more politically aware, and I will be
Yes.
surprised if some of them do not enter the political arena. I think
Yeah, I do enjoy the conversation for sure.
I made a bit of an announcement in the group today that I've become affiliated with, the Liberal Democrat Party as an unpaid volunteer because it seems to match closest my person. I just wondered, are you have you actually considered maybe entering the political arena yourself at some point?
Uh, Initially, if I go back to when that first came on my radar, initially I hadn't, because for me, I'm a social commentator and I
Yeah,
actually really do love listening to both sides. And unlike modern politics, where it seems to be black or white, red or blue,
yeah.
left or right, I feel that well, firstly, I'm a bit annoyed with the two-party system,
Oh
but
God,
I
yeah,
feel you can cherry pick good from both sides. I can see merits in both arguments. And look, I have a teenage daughter who is a staunch lefty,
yeah,
and everyone else in the house is kind of a libertarian like me. They're kind of center right, and
yeah.
she's a staunch lefty. And I have to say, lots of her arguments make sense as well. But what started happening for me is that my social commentary, particularly on radio and podcast, was drawing into me people from a particular party, the Liberal
Yeah.
Party in Australia. And like you, they felt that my feelings and beliefs and desires for the country were best in line with that party. And I have had lunches and I have had discussions and
Yeah.
I have had paperwork sent to me. And I have been invited to meet with a particular house that is in my area. And I am actually also talking to a very, very high level previous politician. I'm actually doing the same thing I'm doing with you now. I'm
Oh,
doing with him
brilliant.
tomorrow night, and along with the former police commissioner for Victoria.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so I think what's happening, and I really hate this word because this word actually is a bit lefty, but something is happening organically. And look,
Yeah.
I can't see myself up there on the podium speaking to people about a manifesto, but what I can see myself doing is getting on board with someone whose platform I believe in and getting behind them. And I really believe that I do everything in a respectful way. That's how I
Yeah.
move forward. I do see myself more than anything else, more than soap, more than television, more than radio,
Yeah.
more than modeling. I do see myself as a role model for my children. And I think if I'm trying to be a good role model for my children, then I'm probably going to be good for the wider community, because there's a lot of sincerity in that end. So we'll see where it goes to, but there's definitely a lot of talk about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
look, absolutely. Look, I've been going through a bit of a soul searching period myself. You can imagine Irish Catholic, Lancashire, come from very much the tradition, the right wing of the Labour Party. I've got a sister who's
Yeah.
a Labour councillor back in the UK, and I'm
Wow.
currently running the end of lockdown group. And all my friends started thinking I was having some kind of a midlife crisis. And
Don't we all, Tim?
absolutely. And then I suddenly thought, I think it's more that society's moved on rather than my core values. And look, I'm really keen to have a stance of liberty, people's actual individual rights, plus
Yeah.
reciprocity. Not everybody has to agree with you, but they have to have
Yeah.
the right. And then accountability, holding the government, holding politicians actually
Yes.
accountable. So that's my base.
That's what my meeting's about tomorrow night.
Oh,
My meeting
wonderful.
tomorrow, what we're looking at in Victoria is that constitutionally, the way the Victorian constitution is at the moment, is there cannot be a recall for the Dan Andrews government.
Yeah.
And so when it emerged, because obviously I've got one foot in Australia, I've got three legs basically. I'm
Yeah.
three legs. I've got one foot in America, one foot in the UK, and one foot in Australia. So what was interesting for me as a former resident of California for 7 years is that they have just reached enough votes to recall Gavin Newsom, and he has actually been an appalling governor. And look, it's nothing against him personally. I'm not saying he's a horrible person, but the way California has gone, you've got over 53% taxation. You've got people living in tent cities on the streets. And the gap between the wealthy in the Hollywood Hills and Beverly Hills compared to the average person in California is widening. It's the kind of thing that when I was a world traveler, when I was a model, it was something you would see in the streets of Cairo. People were either extremely wealthy or begging in the streets. And as you said before, I think for me, the reason a lot of people are sitting up and taking note, you know, the left court said that they were woke. They were woke because they cared about the planet, and they cared about civil rights and that kind of thing. Well, now the center right are woke, but we're woke about something that is very imminent and very terrifying, and that's freedom of speech and freedom of choice, which sort of feels like it's sneaking towards an end game where we either won't get that choice, or if we choose the wrong way, we'll be punished. So really, you're saying to people, you can choose A or B, but if you choose B, we're going to punish you and your life will become rubbish. You're not really being given a choice. And that's what people are worried about.
God, yes, it sounds like we've got a lot of common ground. And I hope that you will publish this interview you've got planned tomorrow to our group. And I hope we can continue with some kind of dialogue. And listen, I've got to confess, I'm a little bit starstruck.
You're crazy, Tim.
Look, I once met...
I'm the least starry star you will ever...
I know you are. But I remember I once met Michael Caine, my absolute favourite actor of all time. And I literally just stood there and could not think of a single coherent thing to say to the poor man. He must have thought that was an idiot. So listen, thank you so much for your time tonight. And like I say, thank you. And I'm sure we'll post the links to your book, etc. And like I say, thank you for so much for your support for the end of the lockdown.
Thank you. And thanks to End the Lockdown Australia. Thank you to all of you for caring and talking about it and thinking about it, because, you know, when it comes to the 1% making all this decision, you could fit them in a room, and we're billions and billions of people. So we need to make decisions for us. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye.